All right, so this is Rabbi Son, hot takes on news, pop culture, and religion, hosted by Rabbi Patrick and his son, Javon over here. Spiritual, irreverent, always fearless, produced by Darshan Yeshiva. And here we go. So, Javon, how you been doing lately?
Fine.
You need to sort of maybe sell a little bit more of your experience in life than just like, fine.
Because I'm doing fine. I'm not...
Is fine your permanent state of being?
Exactly.
Like, that's your homeostasis?
Being, like, all extra about it, you know. Oh, I'm fine. I'm doing fantastic. That's what depressed people do.
Oh, really? Depressed people like to talk about how good they're doing?
No, they like to fake it.
They like to fake it. In my experience, depressed people generally can't fake it too well.
Yeah, because you don't know any people who are good at it.
Because I don't know any depressed people?
That's not good at being depressed.
That's not good at being depressed.
Yeah.
I didn't realize there was a gradation of skill set at being depressed.
Yeah, you, like, hide it. You, like, be happy and smile. Then, like, you know, behind the facade, you're just like...
That's
like,
possible.
Hi,
That's possible. Yeah, I mean, there are plenty of depressed people who do fake it. That's for sure. One of those kind of groups of people probably being celebrities. So this is why we might want to segue into this. So you and I were talking about celebrity gossip. So you really like celebrity gossip. You love your pop culture takes, things like that. So the question that we had was, can we gossip about celebrities? So a little bit of info about gossip. It's Lashon Hara. So Lashon is tongue, and Hara, the evil, right? So the evil tongue. In fact, I have a tattoo right here of a skull that says evil tongue in it, Lashon Hara. This is my don't gossip tattoo. The fact that I have a tattoo about Judaism, about something you're not supposed to do, is a whole myriad of Jewish religious problems. But anyway, so can we or should we gossip about celebrities?
Can we? Yes. Should we? Absolutely.
Okay, so talk me through it.
I mean, you put yourself in a public space, and in the public, you are criticized. You are judged. You are talked about. That's, you know, not celebrity specific. They're just people.
Okay.
You get gossiped about at school, like at work.
Okay.
So they are just, you know, existing. Maybe they're being gossiped about by more people. But yeah, if you're putting your business out into the public, just expect to be gossiped about.
Okay, expect to be gossiped about, because so there's something about being a person of notoriety which lends itself to you being gossiped about.
No, I said,
therefore it's acceptable?
No, I said anyone can gossip about anyone. Anyone can get gossiped at.
Okay. And that's acceptable to you.
Exactly.
And worth promoting.
Promoting, I mean, people should say what they want to say. Consequences, you know, be ready for them.
Really? Okay. So you would say that it is not only okay to gossip about people, but that you should gossip about them?
Exactly.
Why should you gossip about a person?
Because why not?
Because why not? Well, I think
as long as you're not like bullying, because bullying is something different.
Well, I mean, bullying being one of those things, right? At what point does gossiping or talking about other people spill over into
gossiping,
that, right?
You know, could be just, you know, talking about what they have going on in their life and give your opinion on it.
Okay. Do we need to have opinions on everybody's everything all the time?
Yes. Life is about opinion.
You apparently are the internet. Like, you are Twitter as a person, or X, or whatever we're supposed to call it now.
Yeah. I have opinions.
You do.
As we all do.
You do have a lot of opinions.
Whether or not people want to voice that is up to them.
Well, Jewish opinion about having opinions. So the idea is that we're not supposed to gossip. We're not supposed to engage in like frivolous speech. The speech we're supposed to give is supposed to be meaningful, to the point, helpful. It's supposed to have all these other sort of attributes. You know, at what point do you call something gossip versus truth-telling versus whatever? I'm kind of on the side of that's incredibly subjective, and it's really hard sometimes to decide what that is. For example, there's a question of, is it gossip if you happen to talk about like something that a company does, right? Like if you're someone who exposes something from the inside, right? Are you, I forget what we call those people. For some reason, my brain's like completely forgotten what you call whistleblowers. Thank you. Yes, there's actually a Jewish legal question about should you be a whistleblower? Is that right or wrong? And it's actually kind of complicated, strangely enough. It's not as straightforward as you would think it is.
I mean, well, ultimately, every year you have a holiday. You can apologize to people you may or may not have offended, and then you can move on. So
that's not.
But it could.
Yom Kippur is not an excuse to sin.
No,
it's in case you do.
Exactly, you sin every day. So
therefore, sin more with gossip.
Exactly, and you can apologize to those who need apologizing, and then
that is terrible.
You move
logic.
on to the new year.
That's terrible.
I'm just using the logic given to me.
Well, I never gave you.
I know you.
I had no.
Oh yeah, no, you didn't give me that logic, but I was like, yeah, you just apologize and then you go on to the new year.
You just were thinking about this leading up to Yom Kippur. You're like, well.
Oh no, I just thought about that right now.
Oh, you just thought about it?
Yeah, I was like, that makes
okay.
incredible sense, which it does.
Okay, no, it doesn't. We're moving.
Yes, it is.
Okay, so you make this good point though about if you're a person in the public though, and so you could also ask the question like maybe it's not okay to gossip about certain people. Is it okay to gossip about politicians though? So you're under the catch-all of like it's okay to gossip about anybody.
Yes.
Anybody, anywhere.
Exactly.
What about someone's children?
Gossip about someone's children. I mean, you as a grown adult should never gossip about someone's children. Now, gossiping about someone's...
they're people, aren't they?
Gossiping about someone's parenting style, yes, you can gossip
but you seem to believe that you could gossip about anyone, anywhere.
And if you want to gossip about children, I mean, I don't think you should put your children on the internet so they can be gossiped about, but...
Fortunately, I'm not putting you on the internet. You're choosing of your own free will. Please speak to the camera and let them know of your free will.
Gossip. I don't care. I don't care. Gossip.
Well, so far, so good. No gossip yet.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, on the subject of children, and you'll hear in the background, we have a cat that won't stop meowing. And this is a low production environment. So, you'll just have to get used to it. Okay. So, some people were bringing up to me this the other day. There's a Jewish organization, there's actually several that have sort of either gotten interested in questions of infertility within the Jewish community. There's podcasters now who are doing podcasts about infertility from a Jewish perspective. There's some adoption stuff. There's basically 2 advocacy groups. And then you have your local Jewish family services that'll do some adoption related things, but it's more like home studies and things like that. So if you're someone who wants to adopt, they'll do sort of the paperwork and things like that are involved with it. But that's a little different than a nonprofit that seeks to help children to get adopted, right? So those are kind of different things. There's a group of Jewish women that were working to have infertility treatments be covered by health insurance, the same way birth control is. And then at the same time, with all of this infertility stuff, and then the little bit, I would say not enough, the little bit of adoption related stuff that's going on, there's also this phenomenon of child free, which seems to be younger millennials, Gen Z's a little young to be having kids anyway. But what is your take on sort of all of that stuff? I know I just kind of threw a lot out there. First of all, what do you think about the idea of child free? This is a lifestyle that people are choosing.
I mean, parenting isn't for everyone, and everyone shouldn't be parents.
I agree with that. Absolutely.
Yeah, so if they think that, a child is too much responsibility, then, or they just don't want to have kids, they can be like, oh yeah, my sister and my brother have kids, I'll go play with them and then send them back home because I don't, I like it for a little bit.
That's what being a grandparent is about, from what I understand. Yeah. It's mostly babysitting, and then you get the kids all riled up, and then you just kind of go, it's after 5, you're home, it's your problem now.
Yeah, just send them off, and you can be had a good time playing with them, but I couldn't imagine doing that day to day. And then there's multiple things you have to worry about as a parent. Just your child's safety, school, all of these different things that parents have to think about. Right. Some people don't want to think about that.
Sure. I mean, the birth rate is declining, and it's declining everywhere in the Western world. And I'm actually very uncomfortable with this. And the reason why I'm uncomfortable with this is not sort of political and economic, though I think there are like political and economic concerns that we have, right? Like if we do not have enough people working to fund our social safety nets, whether it's Social Security in the United States or pension programs in other countries, whatever, that's an issue. Like all of those benefits are going to have to be reformed in such a way that it no longer requires a workforce. You know, Japan has this problem like big time apparently because they have like one of the most aging populations. Is even in Israel, like there's a decline now in the number of children being had by couples. So like it's just interesting that this is a thing that we're having to deal with now. And I don't believe that it is as simple as people just not wanting to have kids. Like I think
for some people it's not, but
yeah, for some people
it is.
Yeah,
and then for like Japan, well, they have their own set of problems in like
true.
Not really being that open to foreigners
Mm-hmm.
moving to Japan, so that's their own set of problem. I'm not really sure about Israel, and as for like the different things you're talking about with Social Security and all of that, it is just like somebody will figure it out. Like,
I mean, here's hoping.
Why have it's like I see you see it as a problem, but I see it as a problem that you see it as a problem that people should have kids just for them to run the rat race.
Well, no, that's not at all.
Programs.
That's merely one aspect of it that is more macro level.
Because I was just saying,
no, like, I don't think you should have children just to fund Social Security. I don't believe that. Don't believe that. I do think, though. I think that big picture. I think we are becoming, in America at least, a country that is in some ways almost anti-family. And that we have gotten to a point where careerism, going to your point of like what you just said about running the rat race, careerism and career should be like the thing that is like transcendent to you. It's the thing that should just like bring you all of your joy and all of your meaning. And for most of human history, people just did stuff to pay the bills. Like this idea of like my career. That's not like
maybe
a
people
thing.
have more free time. I mean, you're just going like to work because things are getting more expensive. Like to even buy a home in this area, like what is it? 300, 400?
Yeah, it's
so like
escalating. Well, after COVID, I mean, that's when it just shot up. It wasn't like that before.
People have things are getting more expensive. People are worried about trying to secure themselves. They can't secure themselves while trying to secure a child.
But you know what? But culturally, you hear about child free, people being child free. People don't want to have kids because they're expensive. Yeah, kids have always been expensive. There was never a time that kids weren't expensive. There was never a time that kids weren't difficult. There wasn't ever a time where, as a parent, you were going to have to sacrifice, if you're a good parent, sacrifice for your kids. There was never a time in human history when it was just like, babies are so simple. Teenagers, they never cause problems. Like, that was never a thing. And now suddenly, there's all this consciousness of like, oh, but kids are so hard. Oh, it's so difficult to be a parent. It's like, yeah, no kidding. Your mother probably didn't have it that easy either, right? And like, I don't buy this idea that one day everyone woke up and was like, kids are expensive and hard. Like it just doesn't. I don't buy it. I think it has to deal. Yes, cost is an issue, right? Like that's definitely a thing. But I think it's just more of we've become a society where we just place so much emphasis on work and stuff. And the idea of like having a kid is just like, it's cute. Like, I mean, literally I saw an ad, or not an ad, excuse me. I saw a YouTube video where the title was, "What Are Children For?" And I'm like, they're not a Birkin bag, like having a family isn't about some like utility that you get, right?
I mean, for some people it is.
God.
Even people with multiple kids, they feel as though, they are entitled to their child's life, because they gave birth to that child. Oh, I sacrificed for you, so therefore you do this thing for me. And then some kids.
I thought that's why you do the podcast, because I sacrificed for you, and you have to do the podcast. Kidding.
I was gonna say,
I'm kidding.
I was like,
Glad
sacrifice.
that my delivery was. Oh, you're like, you never sacrificed
Yeah, I was
anything.
like, sacrifice. Sacrifice.
You're like, I'm the least problematic person.
I really am. No, but like, I just
Okay,
think
but anyway, yeah.
that some people just, aren't up for it. Like, parenting is a challenge, and some people aren't cut out for it. Some people don't want more, because yes, sometimes kids can be annoying, and parents can say their kids are not annoying, but your kids are annoying. I get you don't want to say that because you don't want to be, oh, did you just say your kid were annoying? No, I love my kids. You can love your kids can also be annoying. That's two things.
That is actually very true. That's very true.
So, but like some people just think that their lives are just so like full of annoyances that they don't want another thing or another person that has to rely on them like solely. That's what a child does. Like it's so much attention. So it's like so much gets poured into having a child.
Yeah, but life's always been annoying. And actually, we have more conveniences now than we've ever had. So, like, especially for people who are higher income, like, oh, it's annoying to go to the grocery store. Yeah, Instacart. Oh, it's annoying to make dinner. DoorDash. Oh, it's annoying to mow your lawn. There's 100,000 people who will happily like TaskRabbit that or like whatever. So I don't know. A lot of the reasons why, which may be completely valid for some people, and again, like I'm not saying every person should have kids, not every couple should have kids, but I haven't found a single compelling reason like why now suddenly everyone has just woken up to the idea that like having kids are a challenge.
I mean,
I just don't buy it.
Have you seen kids?
Do you think kids are more difficult now?
I think kids,
because that one I haven't heard. The idea that children are fundamentally more difficult now than they've been in the past.
I mean, I don't think they're more difficult. I just think you see that kids are difficult is because their parents don't know how to parent.
Oh,
and it's just like once they see that, they're like, "Oh, that's what people produce." I'm like, that's
So you're saying that when you're out in the streets, doing your own thing, you're a couple or you're a single person and you see parents with kids or you see children, you're like, oh my God, like these people are insane. I want no part of that.
Exactly. Or then like when they keep hearing about like different stuff happening in the world, because I do think some people like not a lot of people, but certain people are like, oh my gosh, like all of this stuff keeps happening. Like, what if I have a kid? What if this thing, and they like cause themselves so much paranoia that they don't want to have kids because they don't want to ever face that reality of something bad happening, even though it's completely, it's rationally irrational.
Yeah, I mean, this is what they say. I mean, I don't know if this is true or not. If there is anyone who is listening to this or watching this who has decided not to have children because of climate change, I legitimately would like to get to know you, not because I dismiss that there are people who feel this way. It's just I've never met someone beyond like bots on the internet talking about like, oh, Gen Z doesn't want to have kids because of climate change. Like I really just it falls under my category of like, oh wow, it turns out kids are expensive. Like it's just another one of these things where I'm like, I just don't believe that suddenly everyone figured that stuff out. Wow, my topics must be really boring.
No, I don't know. I don't know. I'm yawning.
I don't know. And I think just from a Jewish perspective, like, we belong to a religion that doesn't tell you to have kids, but it's a householder family religion. It's not a monastic religion. It's not a religion that is ambivalent on family. Like there's, literally religious principles that we hold to in how we are your parents. Like there are certain things that we do. Like I am religious. I would do it anyway, but I'm religiously required to help you to have what they call a trade, meaning like for you to be an independent adult who can sustain themselves, right? I am religiously bound to help you to be someone who can form healthy relationships. That's another part of the religion. And it's given in the context of every father is supposed to give their son a trade and a wife. It's like the way that it's formed in the language, but that's like very wooden language to mean something a lot more abstract, right? So like we were talking, your mom and I about, what happens if the trajectory continues, we have fewer and fewer and fewer kids. What happens to life cycle? Like what if people don't marry and they don't have kids? Right? That's a huge part of like what I spend a lot of time doing. And it's just an interesting question to me that this like sort of, I mean, I hate to keep calling it anti-family, but kind of this like maybe anti, but like just disinterested, maybe is another word for it. I don't know.
I mean, if people can't form healthy relationships, then like they can never get a relationship. That means they can never.
Well, they can get a relationship. There's plenty of people who can't form healthy relationships.
I mean, yeah,
who get in them anyway.
It's unhealthy, and like it's not a serious relationship. It's not a serious relationship that you're talking about taking those those life changing steps, and it's just like this toxic cycle, and then it's like well, majority of people can't keep relationships. I mean, and if the trajectory goes where it goes, I mean, like the religion's gonna have to evolve as it does.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just kind of over it with the anti-family sort of approach, and like it frustrates me because I think we certainly have a lot of problems in this world. Children are not one of them. Yes, it is expensive to raise a child if you don't have social supports, things like that. But I think that that's a result of families disintegrating on some level. You don't have as many like grandparents who used to live like, where their children live, right? Who would then be the free babysitting, right? And things like that.
But I don't think,
or aunties, you don't have like, and even beyond biological family, you don't have like the coaches who used to do after school programs.
Because you can't trust people.
But this
can't. You
this
can't
is
trust
stranger
people.
danger stuff that started with my age group.
But it's not strange. It's not irrational. These are things that parents worry about. You can't be trusting everybody with your child because at the end of the day, you really don't know everyone. And I know people want to be naive and like think the best of everybody, but you always have to think that everyone in this world are capable of doing anything.
I mean, but do people really sit down and think to themselves like, this is why I'm going to choose to not have children?
I mean, because people should.
Because there's a possibility that, one day my child might be confronted with any number of harmful things.
I mean, but some people don't want to face that reality.
That's saying I'm not going to drive because I might be in a car accident, which is more likely to happen than these other things.
And some people don't.
Are we that paranoid of society? Like, literally, are all decisions going to be made now because of anxiety? Is that the root of it? It's literally just like we are now such an anxious society.
Apparently, Gen Z has, so many mental health issues. I don't have them, so I wouldn't know. But so many of Gen Z has, mental health issues, so maybe.
Huh. I don't know. Moving on. So, this leads to this question of, we were talking about transhumanism. Okay, so there's two elements to this. So one element is voluntary human extinction, and the other is transhumanism. So voluntary human extinction is a movement that started basically in the 1970s. It was an environmentalist movement, and the idea was to basically eliminate the human species. That there were too many of us. This was during a time when there was this like very Malthusian fear that there were too many human beings on the planet. We were going to run out of resources. That ended up not being true. And we will probably hit some sort of plateau, which we're in right now. And we'll probably then hit a decline. And again, it's because of fewer people having children. But this whole movement was towards voluntary human extinction. So I was listening to a podcaster, journalist, researcher named Whitney Webb. She made an interesting point, which is that voluntary human extinction is no longer like a thing. It's no longer part of the culture, this move towards let's have fewer and fewer people. But there is this kind of move towards transhumanism. And the idea being that we should just kind of like leave this kind of mortal coil of, being flesh and blood and like kind of live in like the cloud. And I was playing the Oculus earlier, and it occurred to me that like, this is what they want. The people who have kind of moved from this transhumanist movement from voluntary human extinction movement into transhumanism, kind of like this idea that one day we will just kind of exist as like digital spirit creatures in the clouds, or in the cloud, in tech. What are your thoughts on all of that?
I mean, my thoughts on, voluntary human extinction. I mean, I think that, I mean, humanity can like end any day. Like, whether that's an asteroid or like, escalation in war, then people start dropping, nuclear bombs, and then, we have like, world gone, or just like, yeah, any of that stuff. As for like transhumanism,
I mean, would you want your consciousness to be like digitally uploaded into a server somewhere where you could live like basically a digital life, like Sims or something?
I think all roads need to end.
All roads need to end.
All roads need to end. No one wants to live forever. No one who would, no one who's actually lived wants to live forever. People know when their time is gone, when their time is up, and they've accepted that, and they're just like, waiting for their time. All roads need to end. I don't want to live in a simulation. Like, if anything, okay, not a simulation. If I could be a robot, maybe that'd be cool.
Now,
like,
wait a minute. So, what would be different between living?
because like I could like move around, and I won't be in a digital world. Like a digital world, that's fake.
Okay.
That's like not interactable.
Okay.
Like, I mean, it would be when you're in like.
When you're in it, you would feel
but
like
no, just imagine if I was like an android and I could like, travel space. That would be a way more like interesting experience than like getting plugged into a server.
Okay. Well, but in a sense though, I mean, we are still talking about transhumanism because your physical body is now being replaced by machinery.
Yeah, not the whole cloud thing. I could do like an android, but the cloud thing, and even so, like, I'll get tired of being an android eventually. And it's like, oh, let me go to the sun.
Oh God!
What? Like I said, all roads must end. Like, people. Like, how many times can you see people die before, like, that's like.
You mean if someone was living like some eternally long amount of time?
That is like that is
like a vampire or someone like that. Right. I mean, you're a fan of some of these types of genres. Are there any existential vampire stories where the vampires are like, this has been going on too long, I'm always watching people, live and die? Or do the vampires all just kind of live in their little shadow world where everyone lives? The undead, I guess, live forever or whatever. You know what I mean?
I feel like it was, but I can't think of the show right now.
Right.
Where like one of the people were like, oh yeah, I'll live forever. And then like, when they died, it's like, oh, it was Twilight. It was Twilight, the second the last no, I'll say the second part to the final movie.
Okay.
And one of the old characters, basically his wife had died.
Okay.
And like the whole lore behind it, it'll have to get explained to like make sense. But he's been alive for so long. And then like when they in the final battle, like they were getting ready to kill him, and he just accepted it because he was like, I've suffered enough, and I've lived so long. There's like, I've seen it all. I've done it all. What more is there to do? And like, really, what more is there to do? Like on Earth, if you were to live forever, that's what I'm saying. If you're gonna do like, I would think about the whole Android thing, because I get to explore different planets, like go different places, see the universe. If I could see the universe, then I'll be like, oh yeah, there's a new different experience going to these different planets, learning these different things, seeing these different things.
So the Android thing would be like just a vehicle for your consciousness to be able to explore different things that are tangible.
Exactly.
Right. And you wouldn't even need that if there was like a spacesuit that you could wear that would take you to Saturn.
I want to be an android.
Why an android then?
Because I won't die. And I can like explore more of the universe.
Well, that's what I'm saying though. If you could wear like a spacesuit
that will keep you alive forever.
That would keep you okay, now wait a minute. Now you're changing subject though.
No, I'm not. I'm just saying, like, you said in a spacesuit, but like you going to space,
so that you would be physically able to go to those places, is what I'm saying.
No, but your physical body will give out, and you won't be able to see anything. Moving through space takes a long time. So, like, by the time you even like,
but what about if you had a spaceship that would take you through like warp speed?
We're not even at that point. We're not.
Well, we're not at that point where you could become a robot either. We're speaking hypothetically.
I mean, hypothetically, no.
You'd rather be the android than have warp speed and be able to go on vacation to Saturn.
Exactly.
Why?
Because if say like if I feel like my journey is too like premature and like my robot body gets like torn apart on a planet that has like I don't know some creature that's big, and then like I'll have a backup, that'll be able to plug my brain to like a different body, and I'll be just like new android body, and I'll just keep on it.
Wait a minute, this doesn't make any sense though. So if you believe like Judaism, like in the Bible, it says to everything there's a season, and one of those lines in that poem is a time to be born and a time to die. So you are on the sort of fatalistic or the finitism. I'm not saying that right. Of eventually you kick the bucket.
Yes.
Okay. But you're wanting some sort of technology that will make you a robot so that you can at least stretch that for as long as possible.
I mean, like I said, all roads must end, which it will end.
Well, that's what I'm saying is why have the intermediary step of being a robot? Why not want for hyperspace travel and these like suits that would then allow you to go explore these things like
because
in
like
your life?
Human body, you can get sick. And like if I want to explore the universe and I'm going out to do that, I want to do that for like as long as possible. Seeing like, all these different things.
I think you're actually a transhumanist, actually. I think you're a transhumanist who just wants to be able to pull the plug one day.
I guess, but I still do think, I was going to say like I don't want to say what I was going to say, but
right
when it's time, return to the earth, like, it's time.
Well, there's what I think about? There's actually a Robin Williams movie called I Am Robot that actually talks about this, but it goes from the opposite side. So instead of a man who becomes a robot, it's a robot that appears to have such human-like qualities, like human-like personality, consciousness, and then over time, a scientist basically works to give him as much humanity physically as possible through this like engineering and whatever until he becomes sort of a pseudo human. And it's a whole philosophical journey of like, what does it mean to actually be a human being? And one of the things that happens is when he transitions, I guess, from a purely synthetic to an organic person, one of the questions he asks is, how long will I live? And the scientist like turns the dial or whatever and says, none of us know. And like, it's this almost odd moment of realization for him that like, oh, wow, I've never considered the possibility of being finite until this moment right now.
I mean,
so yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Some people are scared to die. And like,
Yeah.
I mean, it is
nice and dark there. And yeah, and I think that's where some of transhumanism is. I mean, there's a lot of other stuff that people have said about it, but moving on, gosh, we are just getting darker and darker here. So finding joy in difficult times. So there's been a lot that's gone on lately because we just had all of our Jewish holidays and all of that. Thinking about October 7th and these questions of, can you have sort of joy? Is it okay for people to have joy when they're also thinking about darkness and when there's this kind of shadow that's cast on a holiday or on a special moment of some kind, right? So I'm thinking about like someone who has a death in the family and then their birthday comes up, or someone who, with our holidays, right? We have all of these holidays, but we're also thinking about it's the 1 year anniversary of October 7th, all of these things. So one of the things that I think is interesting is the number of emails that I've gotten lately from organizations that have tried to talk about this, that this is something that's clearly on people's mind. And my response to this, and I'll see what you think about this, is you have to seek out joy anyway. That life is not always easy, but that if you can have some kind of gratitude for your life and gratitude for your very existence in existence, that's at least some kind of place to start. And that, yeah, the birthday may not be as glorious because a friend or family member passed away, or, our high holidays maybe and Sukkot aren't quite as joyous because we're still thinking about hostages who are being held, or the anniversary of the death of so many people. But the human spirit continues. So what's your take on that?
It's gonna sound really plain.
Okay, that's
And it's
fine.
like, probably
Peshat
like,
is what we would say literal.
yeah. I think that you should prepare yourself for everyone around you dying. And I don't like, let me explain. Meaning that, like, it is a thing that happens. It is a thing we know is going to happen. When, where, what time, and how is a mystery.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So you know it's going to happen. And, when it happens, you're devastated.
Mm-hmm.
And, but you like have to think that, yes, this happened. Yes, this person's gone. But I still remember, what the good times, what we laughed about, what we had fun about.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, I won't get those times again, but I got that then, and I'll probably never experience something like that again. So it's best to hold on to those good memories than thinking about, I'm just, oh yeah, they're not here. Oh, it's not like, because you can't keep dragging yourself down from like a natural function of life. So like you can't keep like, yes, it's sad, but you can't let that override your life.
Yeah, we have an expression when we hear that someone has died, and it goes Baruch Dayan Ha'emet, which means blessed is the true judge. And that sounds like you're like thanking God for taking the person's life or some horrible thing like that. It's not what it means. It's an expression that is stating something to the effect of, wow, you kind of let's remember that life is life, right? We go through life and we go through the motions, not thinking that all of these things can change, the blink of an eye or whatever. Life, gives and life takes. And so when we say Baruch Dayan Hamet, it's sort of like a snapping back into reality almost. And it doesn't mean you have to be macabre and goth and horrible and sad about it. I didn't say you were. I'm just saying we're both doing the black clothing look today, but it is as much to say that we should have a sense of gratitude for the experiences we had with people. Everyone's always afraid when I've, been helping people who've lost someone, officiated funerals. People are always afraid to say nice things about the deceased, right? So you go up and you eulogize a person, right? So you say like, so and so, and they loved, whatever, fishing and playing the stock market or whatever they were into. But then it's always when it's non-ceremonial that people are afraid to say, oh, I've just been thinking so much about your father was so great at fixing cars. Oh, I remember grandma's cooking so much, or like whatever. For some reason, people are afraid to share positive things with someone who's lost somebody. It's an interesting phenomenon.
I think it's a more interesting phenomenon of not saying negative things.
Not saying negative things.
Yes, like not everyone is good. And
sure.
like I told you before, if I die, before you, then like don't try to be going to my funeral being like, saying all this like, oh yes, he, making up all this stuff like,
But I wouldn't have to. I have plenty of positive things.
I mean, yeah, but like, acknowledging that who I am isn't just those positive things.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't all those like, yes, there were good moments, but then, there are some like, sour moments that you still remember. That's like, oh yeah, then
sure.
we, yeah, and then what came out of that? It's like you don't always have to say good things because life is just not about good things. It's not really living. If you only did good things, people will be like,
yeah, oh, but don't we kind of round up to goodness a little bit? You know what I mean? Like, isn't there a certain amount of like?
I mean, anyone could round up to goodness, but that doesn't mean that we're a good person all the time.
Well, true. No one's ever a good person all the time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, like, you don't have to be like, you don't have to overdo.
But I don't think
you don't have to overdo the compliments because now I feel like you're being disingenuous.
Okay.
Like that you're doing it. Like, oh, I remember Debbie. Oh, her. cherry pie was so fantastic. And then the whole time, you were talking about, you were calling Debbie like a gossip, and like, you really didn't like Debbie. Like you can say, Debbie was, me and Debbie, we not always get along, terrible gossip, but she did have that great cherry pie.
Okay, but that's rounding up to goodness.
No, but you can add in, the real. And then, like, you can just keep it real. Everybody, I just feel like funerals, they get very fake sometimes.
Sure.
And then it's like, no, that person wasn't actually like that. And like, or like, I get that you're trying to, when somebody dies, you're trying to shine them in the best light. You need to shine them in the light that they existed in. Like, not make them more, not make them less, but like what their experience on this earth was. And you should not feel bad about, having, problems with a person who's, died.
Yeah.
You don't have to feel like, just because everyone else is feeling terrible, like, you don't have to be like, oh yeah, like, join in on that, especially like when you still have some unresolved issues and you still feel like, you get what I'm saying?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely true that in my experience, the people who fail this the most, like your thing about can't we keep it real, are the officiants, the clergy, who don't actually know the people very well. So I've been to a few funerals, Jewish and otherwise, where the person who was being buried or celebrated or whatever, the clergy didn't know them very well. And the clergy also made it all about the religion and never mentioned really the person. So I remember one time I went to a funeral of a person who I was Christian of some kind. And the pastor who was officiating the funeral, it was a lot of Christian hymns and whatever. And of course, you'd expect that. It's a church funeral. Yeah, of course. I'm there to be supported because I knew the family. But they never really talked about the person and about like their background or like what their family life was like. It was very much like, and he was survived by his daughter, like he was reading the obit from the newspaper, right? And then he made a point of saying some sort of like religious things around like, well, and he's in heaven with God, so we shouldn't be sad. And don't worry, I talked to him before he died and he believed in Jesus. And I remember in that moment thinking to myself, like, I don't have a dog in the fight on that one, right? Because my religious views are very different in terms of like what makes a person good enough to merit divine love. But I do remember thinking, you don't actually know this person. Like,
and I'm gonna,
you know what I mean? And you're saying these very superficial things that actually I think is more hurtful than if you had gone up and said something like, well, he couldn't earn money if he tried, but dang, he certainly did love his kid, or like some whatever.
Yeah, but like I feel like, I mean, in those instances, I mean, the family failed. Like you were more focused on like giving him like this religious like ceremony rather than just like being around the people who knew him best, because you don't need that for like a funeral, especially if someone's gonna go up there and just like read the obituary. You could have did that yourself.
They don't. Yeah, but you know what though is that I think this is. I wouldn't say the family failed. I'd say the clergy did, because
no, I'm saying the family failed.
Well, but let me tell you why. I understand why you feel that way, but here's the thing: most people don't know what to do, and they rely upon us as the clergy to be the ones that guide them through that. We're supposed to be the experts. And then when we give these sort of subpar life experiences like a bad wedding or a bad funeral, yes, there is a certain amount of buyer beware, and I'm with you on that one. But how? I mean, I don't know the circumstances of that family.
I mean, but why like, okay, you spoke to him like when he died, but did you know him as a person? Like, was he in your congregation? Like, that's stuff I'm wondering. Like, if he wasn't in your congregation, then you're just some rando who talked to him like, at the last minute to like try to bring him comfort. When like the funeral is not really for the dead because they're dead.
Correct.
And just like the funeral is for you to commune and talk to all the people and be around the people that admire this person, love this person, or even have a problem with this person, come, and talk about this person. You don't need clergy for that. You didn't need them for...
Okay, that's not true in our case. Just fair warning. Please don't keep me from having a job.
Yes, obviously, you take a more, like, yes. But, like, I'm talking about, like, anyway, because they threw me out. But, like, you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying. Yeah.
It's better to have no one than a random person who didn't know this person to be
I get what you mean.
Yes,
yeah. From a dignity perspective, especially. Yes. Yeah.
Like, you should feel more comfortable. Like, if you didn't know him, I don't trust you to get up there. And, like, if you're just going to read the obituary, then, like, your presence wasn't really needed.
Yeah.
And then I think sometimes people have, like, this, like, over, like, I don't know the word, but this over reliance on, like, clergy. Not in his case. But it's like over reliance on clergy, like, rather than just being like, what, or like, trying to seek somebody out instead of just being like, hey, we just need to plan a funeral. Mm-hmm. And then this just, we're going to say some nice things, and then we're just going to, pray.
Right.
Like, we can have our own prayer. We don't need to have a big prayer. We can each have our own individual prayer, or if someone wants to come out and a couple people, we can all pray together, say the last words. I think people all rely on the clergy because they feel like, the clergy, you're supposed to have experience. You're supposed to have been doing all these funerals.
Sure.
You're supposed to at least, like, put a little pizzazz into it. Like, the most you can do is, like, ask the family about some, like, some funny stories or something, and not just, like, be boring and basic. And
I agree.
Because that's, like, that's, like, devaluating, like, their life a little bit.
And that nails it. How you just said how it devalues their life, because I know for me, when I officiate a funeral, the questions that I always ask are, give me the basic facts, where the person grew up, who they married, and sort of the basics. But then, tell me about their hobbies, tell me about their work. Share memories that are meaningful to you and to your family. And one of the things I tell people, and this goes back to your point about people aren't always perfect, is I will sometimes tell people, don't be afraid to share a memory that's hard. Like, that's okay too. It doesn't have to be, and we went to Disney World with the kids, and he, romanced me, blah, blah. It doesn't always have to be that. It can be, he was there for me when my mother died. Or, we went through a lot together and it wasn't always easy, but I knew he always loved me. Like those kinds of things are totally fine. I have only ever had, I think, one or two funerals where I knew there was so much strife in the family about the person that had died that it was going to take a lot of, like, English Comp 101 maneuvering to figure out, like, what was I going to say about this person that wasn't going to be disingenuous. And to be honest, I kind of came up with a formula for how to write it. So, like, you're in school and, you've learned about, like, the different types of essays and things like that. I have my own version of that. Like, I have my own kind of format for how do you write a eulogy for someone who was not that great. And
I mean, but they don't have to be great. They are human. That's
well,
what they are.
Right. But I mean, Javon, when I say they're not all that great, I'm trying to be as, like, nice as possible.
I mean, what do you mean?
I don't want to call them the B word or something like.
Yeah, but like, at the end of the day, like, well, that's how they live. That's their human experience. Like, you want people to, like, be this, like, trying to put people in these roles where they have to be, like, perfect. It's not. You can be like, to say, I didn't know, I don't know Tony very well, but he lived
Tony
his life.
The Tiger.
Yes, but he lived his life very human.
Yes, but that's what I do.
Mistakes are made. Yep. Mistakes are made. Great memories were had, and at the end of the day, he was nothing more, than what he was. Nothing more than what he was. But, like, you know what I'm saying. But, like, he was not this person that trying to, pretend to be something else.
Right.
He was him organically.
Authentically.
Yes.
Yeah.
Even though, some people had a problem with it. Some people still have a problem with it.
Right.
And some people always have a problem with it. But on this day today, we're here
over-reliance on the clergy.
Like I'm just saying, but on this day today, we're here to think about all the memories and, burying him along, burying him along. But like, you know what I'm saying?
No, I'm with you. And yeah, and I don't know, maybe sometime I should change the names and some of the info on some of my funeral scripts and release them out for people to see stuff like this. Because honestly, I've wondered if it would be a little bit of a community service. Because like one of the things that I do in funerals before I begin is I say to people, we're here to honor the life of, Tony the Tiger. We've all had different experiences of this person, and we're all having different kinds of experiences right now. Some of us will wonder how we're supposed to behave at a funeral. Some of us are going to cry. Some of us might awkwardly laugh at certain moments. We might get angry. We might be upset with the person. And I say something to the effect of, all of that is acceptable right now. All of your reactions to what is taking place, those are valuable human feelings that you have, and don't feel like you can't feel that way.
I mean, sometimes people do be like falling over the floor, and it's like, okay.
I've never had anyone fall over the floor.
Oh my gosh, you just haven't had a black funeral because, like,
yeah, I've had some multiracial ones, but I haven't had a black.
You need a black funeral because I tell you, like I said, when I went to my grandma's funeral,
yeah,
and I told you the shenanigans.
Yeah, you did some crazy stories. Yeah,
shenanigans. People were bawling their eyes out. People just, had it getting carried out. And I'm like, oh my gosh. Like, this is a show.
Yeah.
Like, I was judging, obviously. Because, like, now it's not your day. It's not your day. You're putting on the show. This ain't about you. You can cry silently to the side. But you don't need to be like, I get that you're hurt. But, like, you can be more hurt, like, in your car or something after the service, because now it's like you're trying to like take up their day,
right?
And like it's not about you,
right?
And like I am validating those feelings, but like you know what I'm saying, it's not about you. Yeah. Like I get that you're hurt, but it's still not about you. Like contain yourself.
Yeah, there are people who, I mean, it's one thing to be upset, and it's one thing to be so upset that people have to intervene. It's a whole other thing when it's about a person trying to make themselves the star of the show. Yeah. That's a whole other ballgame. Okay, so we're coming close to time. So, do you have a piece of news for us, and then an inspirational quote?
Say is as it relates to the news, things are terrible. They're gonna continue to be terrible until they, become great again.
This is definitely the goth episode of
guys, spooky season. But I will leave out a quote. With whatever what we've been talking about, and the theme very much of this particular episode.
Okay.
Our deaths are oh God. Why do I always mess this up? You can leave this in. I'm organic. I'm original.
He's keeping it real.
Okay. Our dead are never dead to us until we have forgotten them. George Eliot. So when you're asking these questions, when you're sending these emails, just remember, as long as you remember those people and how they made you feel, they are never gone.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
that's absolutely true. In Judaism, we wonder, what happens to those when they die. And I always say your loved ones go in here. That's where they go. All right. Thank you, everyone, for watching and listening. Like, share, subscribe. Please send us emails. Let us know how we're doing. Lower production value than maybe some of the stuff you're used to. But, hey, maybe we could fundraise, have a whole studio, concept, neon lights, the whole thing. So if you value it, let us know. We value you. Thank you, Javon. Appreciate you. Thank you to our sponsors at Darshan Yeshiva for making this content possible. Darshan Yeshiva provides beginner-level online Jewish learning, including the very popular Conversion to Judaism program, with sponsoring rabbis and students all over the world. Start your Jewish journey any place, anywhere, and anytime with our conservative, reform, reconstructionist, Jewish renewal, humanistic, and post-denominational rabbi mentors. Become the Jew you always wanted to be with Darshan Yeshiva.